All right, so let's talk about squaring and square rooting, because I think maybe this was a hang up for some people other than Bailey.
Yeah. What? It's a great excuse.
Super unfair to play that I was having a seizure during the test card. Like, what am I supposed to say to that? Okay, anyway, I should probably just call that off the video, but I'm going to leave that on there because Bailey and I have a good relationship. So, squaring and square rooting are not inverse functions.
What?
I know this. I know. It seems wild. So, some of you guys have a tendency to do something like this, right? Like in a bubble diagram, you go squaring that way, right?
Yeah.
And then you think to yourself, well, I know how to unsquare stuff, right? I just square root it. No, that's not the problem.
Plus or minus square root.
Yeah, that's the problem. The square root really should come with a plus or minus, right?
Absolute value of the square root.
So what's the issue? Well, the issue is kind of fundamentally that what does squaring look like as a function?
It's
It's a problem.
Yeah, it's parabola, right? It's the usual x squared parabola, yeah?
so true.
So it totally fails the,
Horizontal line test.
yeah, so it doesn't have an inverse,
Yeah.
right? Because if you draw a horizontal line, you get this guy and this guy. Whoopsie daisies, there's two. Those are your minus and plus thing, right? You guys with me on that? So you can't unsquare stuff because you don't know whether it should be plus or minus. Right?
Okay.
Like, there's a procedure for unsquaring stuff, like account for both pieces, right? But there's not a function for unsquare stuff because you have two outputs for one input. So there is no inverse to the square function. Square rooting is a,
Permanent.
no. Square rooting is a, somebody wrote this on their test. Go look at your question and see if you got this. See if there's a word that starts with P in there and
Square
read
rooting
it.
is a
Square rooting is a,
Problem.
no.
partial.
Partial inverse. It's not a whole inverse. Meaning that these guys, x squared square root, square root of x squared, and x are all actually different functions.
Right.
You guys want to see this? Let's spend a second and think about domains and ranges here.
Alright, so just plug in -1.
So where does x, right, f of x is x, where does that map?
All real numbers.
Yeah, it takes all real numbers and outputs all real numbers.
All real.
Because the way this thing acts on a number, right, is it takes the number you gave it and hands it back,
Uh-huh.
right? So you can give it any number and it can give you
Any number back. Same
any number back. In fact, it gives you the exact same number back,
Wow.
right? So that maps R to R.
Yeah.
Okay, how about the square root of x and then squared?
It's like all positive.
Yeah, it can only take positive numbers, right?
But all real actually.
And then what kind of thing does it output? Wait, why can it only take positive numbers? Yeah, you don't know how to square negative numbers.
So it only gives you positive back.
And then it only gives you positive numbers back,
Because square root is always positive.
right? Because the output of a square is always positive.
Uh,
And then this guy,
can
where you take x and square it first,
that can be negative.
that can take any real number. And what does it output?
Only positive numbers.
Only positive ones. You guys see that? So these aren't even this, they don't even have the same domains and ranges, right? They couldn't possibly be the same functions.
That's so weird.
So then, for that one, can you like not write an inverse formula at all?
Yeah, there just isn't an
Oh, okay,
inverse.
so you just say no inverse?
Yep.
Yeah, you would say-
So what I wanted for this one was, I wanted you to look at that bubble diagram and say, hey, you're squaring in here somewhere. You're not going to be able to back out of that step. So this thing's going to fail the horizontal line test. Thus, it's not going to have an inverse. difficult. Or you could look at the formula and just be like, yo dog, that's a parabola. That's gonna fail the horizontal line test. No inverse.
What number are we talking about?
Forget.
8.